Hi, and welcome to Responsa Radio. I'm Rabbi Avi Killip. The following episode was recorded before we switched to the video recording, so it'll look a little bit different. Hi, and welcome to Responsa Radio, where you ask and we answer questions of Jewish law in modern times. I'm Rabbi Avi Killip, Executive Vice President at Hadar, here with Rabbi Ethan Tucker, Rosh Yeshiva at Hadar, a center for Jewish learning and community building based in New York City. You can check us out and learn more at hadar.org. We have many episodes of this podcast where we talk about questions that interact with people's work lives. I'll say, as someone who is related to many accountants, this isn't exactly an episode about accounting, but this is the kind of question and the kind of topic that is discussed in my house, in my extended family, sort of would very easily be a dinner table conversation. Okay, here's the question.
Yeah.
Hello. I am a financial planner studying for the CFP, the Certified Financial Planner exam. Life insurance is viewed as very necessary, especially for people with young children. So I'm curious, what does halakhah have to say about life insurance? Must we get it? Should we get it? Is relying on the community sufficient or even expected?
Yeah. I just want to offer a mea culpa to the questioner without putting too fine a point on it. I won't describe my current state right now, but let's just say I haven't always held a life insurance policy during periods of time where this person probably thinks it's extremely important. So I offer that. I'm probably not alone among our listeners, but you got to put your cards on the table a little bit. Any answer that you give of, oh, you must do this, or you have to, I'm just giving you a little bit of a hedge. I don't know what your status has been, that insurance things and wills.
And you're not
and
a die-hard life insurance person.
Yeah, I'm careless about certain things like that. I'm not even saying I'm fully defending it. But yeah, I'm just not always on top of everything that's about risk abatement.
Mm-hmm. Sounds like you don't live in my house. Your family is not talking about this at the dinner table.
No, we are not. Every now and then it'll be like, hey, we didn't do that. Isn't that a problem? And yeah, okay, maybe. But
but look, you know what's for dinner tonight and we don't. So, everyone's house is different.
Everyone's got their strength.
Okay, so what is halakhah? Where do we even start with this question?
Look, you already did this kind of, but let's just sort of break it down, right? Like, you could answer this as getting life insurance is forbidden. You could say getting life insurance is permitted, but optional if you feel like it. Or you could treat it as a certain kind of interpersonal, even religious requirement or obligation. So I think what we have to try to break down is like, what would drive you to those different perspectives? And then we can kind of assess how have we come out. Okay, I mean, why would life insurance possibly be forbidden to buy?
Yeah, what could be wrong with it?
Questioner seems to think so, right? So look, if there's a version of, if you're meant to trust in God, maybe life insurance is a hedge against what God is going to give you. That somehow you're not trusting your family will have enough, will have what they need when you die. Maybe it's like a form of outsmarting God.
Like I would say, my life insurance is that I'm a mensch, and therefore I'll be fine.
Yeah, or if you want some more traditional texts that talk about this, the text we say in Birkat HaMazon and the benching all the time, Baruch HaGever Asher Yivtach B'Shem V'Haya Hashem Yivtacho. Blessed is the man who trusts in God, and God is, their stronghold. If you look in the verses in Yirmiyahu, which we read in a Haftarah about this, there's a companion verse, which is Arur HaGever Asher Yivtach Ba'Adam. Cursed is the person who trusts in people. That is to say, you've got it all worked out. You don't need any divine assistance. You've, set up all your accounts as you need. The rabbinic version of this is in the Talmud Bavli and Sota. Rabbi Eliezer says, anyone who has bread in his basket and says, but what will I eat tomorrow? Eino ela mikotnei amana. That person is of the little of faith. What does that seem to be conveying? Don't stress out about what you're going to eat tomorrow. Like, if you don't have something right now, okay, you got to stress out, you got to do something. But I'm going to worry tomorrow or 3 months out. You have little faith. You have no sense that maybe the arc of the world will bend in your favor.
So you could see an ethos where someone would say, should I buy life insurance? And the answer would be like, don't think that way.
Yeah. Don't stress out that much. Don't assume the worst. That's one angle. Like, it's insufficient trusting in God. Okay. Another angle, maybe familiar to folks, is sort of inviting bad things. Maybe inviting death by talking about death. Should we talk about death while we're still alive? And there's a couple interesting texts here. So, for instance, there's a text in the Talmud that's talking about people who are guarding a body that has died, a person who has died, and they're kind of taking shifts caring for the body. And a few people are going off to daven. And basically, in a brief window of a prayer opportunity, one of these people, the text of the Talmud prescribes, should say, Master of the universe, I have sinned so much before you, and you haven't collected even 1/1000th of me. That is to say, you haven't held me accountable for even a fraction of what I deserve. Please may it be your will to mend all the breaches in our communal fences. And Abaye hears this tradition and says, you should never say that because le'olam al yiftach adam piv lasatan. You shouldn't open your mouth to the accusing angel, meaning, what are you doing reminding God that God has only collected 1/1000th of what is due? Don't say that. You're saying it to be humble, but you're actually going to invite disaster. So you can imagine a text like this having a much larger ethos of, tfu, tfu, tfu. Like, don't talk about that. I don't want to hear about you planning for your death. It's going to bring about a premature death.
Like, you could imagine a story, if we bring it to life insurance, of someone saying, like, he just bought a life insurance plan and he dropped dead the next week.
Yeah.
He should have never bought that plan.
Right. Something like that.
As opposed to, like, thank God he bought that plan.
Right. Exactly.
Like, somehow buying life insurance will actually lead you to die.
Yeah. Somehow it'll unleash the forces of negativity, chaos.
I certainly do think buying life insurance forces you to, allows you to. There's organizations now trying to help us actually learn to come to terms with our own death, to acknowledge death, to not be afraid of talking about death. But there is a certain way in which buying life insurance forces you to acknowledge your mortality, to think about what will be after I'm gone? Who do I want to be cared for after? What responsibility do I have? And to whom? And to what after I'm gone?
Right.
And in that way, like, should you buy life insurance, which could sound like a, I don't know, are you buying this stock or that stock kind of question, could push into a category of like, what do you think of Unatana Tokef? Like, how do these two things, what do these two things have in common? They make you, think about the fact that the world will continue on after you.
Right. Yeah. And we'll get to, I think, a lot of the reasons why this might not be your dominant orientation, that it's forbidden. But I want to raise one more text, which I think maybe is, if people are aware of it, maybe a touchy point. And even if you're not, you might understand how it plays out. So Evel Rabati, which is a collection of traditions from the Talmudic period, more or less, about dying and death and burial and all of that, deals with the case of the goses, someone who is alive, but they're basically terminally ill and they're going to die shortly. Okay. Like, generally the goses, the assumption is they're going to die within a day or days. And this text asserts, which is a principle of Jewish law, they are alive for all purposes. Like you treat them as alive for all purposes. And then when they give the list of things that are consequences of that, they'll say, you're not allowed to put out an announcement that they're going to die. You are not allowed to start paying for the flute players and the wailers who are going to be at the funeral.
Wow.
You can't start tearing clothing, delivering eulogies. You can't start with a coffin. The rule is anything that has to do with someone who has died, you don't do it until the person dies.
Yeah.
Okay, just straight up. Now that gets codified by the Shulchan Aruch. Like if someone's on their deathbed, you can't do any of this stuff. And the Ramah adds, you can't go dig a grave. You can't be like, oh, okay, they're going to die. They're sitting here. I've got some time. I'll go. No, you can't do that. You got to wait till the person actually has died. You can imagine someone saying, oh, that shows you can't prepare for death before death.
Yeah, that person doesn't understand how life insurance works.
Right, exactly.
You actually can't buy it after you've died.
Correct. So you could conclude if you really went hardcore with this saying, yeah, that's why Jews don't do life insurance, right?
Yeah,
like it's like a
right.
religious principle. You could do, according to this, you could do fire insurance. That might be a problem for, opening your mouth to disaster. But on this front, fire insurance is fine. But life insurance is planning for death during life. Our culture of life, you want to go extreme of like Rabbi Yitz Greenberg, the ultimate telos of all of Judaism is the triumph of life. Maybe you will have found a cure, to death.
Yeah.
By the time this comes along. We don't do that.
This is a good time to take a quick break. We'll be right back with more Responsa Radio. But before that, I wanted to let you know about an upcoming program at Hadar that you might love, especially if you listen to podcasts about halakhah. Of course, I'm talking about Hadar's Halakhah Intensive on May 18th through the 22nd, 2025 at Yeshivat Hadar in New York City. The Halakhah Intensive is a week of incredible high-level learning of Jewish law, designed for learners with experience studying halachic texts. This year, we're learning about the concept of kiddushin al t'nai, or conditional kiddushin, and whether this concept can help make Jewish marriage more egalitarian. Visit hadar.org for more information. If we followed that strictly, that would also prevent us from buying burial plots, which we, of course, do.
Okay, so this is where we're going to quickly move off this. Like, no one's really going to stay there. And then I think this is one of those areas of halakhah which is really interesting in the following sense. It's not that surprising that there will be sources that will say, yeah, it's permitted to buy life insurance. What's interesting is, how will they account for some of those sources that we just talked about? Right? Like, how can I say, I'm taking a very clear route policy-wise, but I'm still accountable to these sources. How would I play that out? First of all is actually the fundamental thing of what does it mean to trust in God and what does it mean to trust in people? Relying on God or trusting in God does not necessarily mean you do nothing. The joke I'm sure most of our listeners have heard about the person who's drowning and they pass up all forms of help, including rowboats and helicopters that come by to save them, each time saying, no, I'm relying on God. God will save me. And then they die and, go up to heaven and there's an accusing finger pointed at God. And God says, what do you want? I sent you 3 rowboats and a helicopter.
Yeah.
Captures an ethos that was first articulated back.
God says, I sent you an insurance salesman.
Yeah, right. So this might actually exactly be right.
A certified financial planner.
A certified financial planner with divine approval. Midrash Tehillim focuses on the words in the Torah, Ki Hashem Elokecha beirachecha bechol maaseh yadecha. God blesses you in all the endeavors of your hands, in all of your efforts. So Rabbi Yaakov says on this, can that be if you sit around and do nothing?
Yeah.
God will help you? No, it's a great reading. That's the whole point of God blesses you b'chol ma'aseh yadecha, with
God
what you
blesses
did.
you if you bought life insurance.
Im asa adam, if the person did something, hareu mitbarech, then they'll get blessing. Im lav, eino mitbarech. If not, you will not get blessing. God just amplifies the human efforts. God is not a replacement for human effort. So going back, yeah, I believe in Jeremiah telling me I shouldn't trust in people. Trusting in people just means, oh, I have no presence of God or the divine in my understanding of my success. I think it was all me. I did it all myself. As long as though you say, wow, I worked really hard and somehow fortune, God, etc., enabled me to succeed, which was not a given. That's not trusting in people or in yourself. So we don't just rely on God, right? That's not a thing. The other thing, which you already alluded to, is, well, people plan for death all the time.
Yeah.
Yaakov tells Yosef on his deathbed, hey, I need you to bury me over there back in the...
Right. And Abraham famously buys a plot of land.
Buys a plot of land. You're buying graves, all of that stuff. Interestingly, there's also rabbinic texts that talk about individual characters trying to, in their own way, kind of, I don't know, game the system or set up their family members for the best outcome. So consider the following Mishnah, which sounds weird until you think through why it would happen. A man says to his wife, this is my bill of divorce for you. Here's your get. It will take effect from now if I die. And the Mishnah says that's a valid bill of divorce. Okay? What's going on here? Almost certainly what's going on here is this is...
Should I guess?
Yeah, guess.
My guess would be that this would have to do with avoiding a levirate marriage.
You got it.
He doesn't want her to have to marry his brother.
That's right. It's a childless couple. I mean, there could be other reasons.
His brother's a jerk?
Who knows? Brother's a jerk, or he wants to spare her the indignity of it, or whatever it is. And he thinks he's going to die from this point. And you can't issue a get to take effect after you die. But you can say, this takes effect from now if I die. If he recovers, he can cancel the get. But what's interesting to me in the context of our discussion, he's talking about death. Right. And taking actions about death, right, while alive. And the Mishnah doesn't seem to think there's anything wrong with that.
And it's actually a really interesting parallel to life insurance, this Mishnah, because it's him trying to care for his wife after. How will my spouse be?
That's right. That's right. I'm caring for the people who I love, and I don't want them, because of my death, to be put in a situation that I could avoid by planning. That's right. Another text like this. Shmuel says, like, what if you have a talus that just sits in a drawer? Okay. Mm-hmm. Like, you maybe wear it every now and then, but it's in the drawer. Does it have to have tzitzit on it while it's in the drawer?
Yeah.
Okay. And he says it does have to have tzitzit on it, because basically, even though it wouldn't have to have it just from sitting in the drawer, like, you might use it or something like that. Okay, whatever. That's a whole other discussion. But Shmuel, it says, agrees that if an old person makes themselves a talit, and by talit, we don't mean like a thing of stripes that you wear in shul, but like a special garment, right? That they intend to be buried in, that talit does not need to have tzitzit on it when it's in the box.
You can make a burial shroud.
Yeah. You're never going to wear it while you're alive, so it doesn't need tzitzit. And once you're dead, you're not going to have tzitzit on it, or you're going to put them on later once you bury the person. But the point is, he's making the burial shroud, right? While he's alive. So the Rivash, medieval authority we've encountered before on this show, tries to just resolve the tension here of, wait a minute, can you plan before death? Can you not plan before death? What about all that stuff if you can't do anything till the person dies? He has an interesting case. He's got someone who's on their deathbed on Friday afternoon, and they want to dig his grave such that if he dies right before Shabbat, they'll be able
They'll
to
have it
quickly
ready.
get him to a grave if it's already been dug. Whereas if they don't do that now, they'll probably have to delay the burial till Sunday, and they would rather not do that. So he says he can't do that, but he says, I want to be clear. That's only because the person is on their deathbed. When someone is on their deathbed, you can't start preparing for their end because that may make them give up and die quicker if they know that's going on. And your job is to let that passing take its natural course. But if you're healthy, of course you can buy yourself a plot.
Right. This feels to me very intuitive that the things you do after the person has died, you shouldn't start doing before. This is where I sort of said before, like, not only is that not what life insurance is, it can't be that, actually. You can only buy life insurance. It's not like I could buy the burial plot after you died, or I could have bought it in advance. You can't buy life insurance after. So to me, this feels like a clear, like for our question, it would put you clearly in the clear.
Yeah, and the way that even gets emphasized more is the Bach will say this, the Aruch HaShulchan will say this. Even the stuff that you shouldn't do while the person is dying is really only a problem if they know about it. Meaning if it's out of their earshot, there's no way they'll hear about it. You're doing it very discreetly.
So it's not about tempting the evil eye. It's about them, respecting them.
According to them. Again, whether the early source in Evel Rabbati is about that, that might really have some evil eye component. But some of these later authorities, building on the Rivash, say it's just about shaloti taref datam. It's just to not kind of upset the mental state and then corresponding physical state.
So it sounds like it's not forbidden.
These sources would say, what are you talking about? That's like buying a grave plot or other ways of ensuring things going well, right? You're healthy now and you're trying to plan for something afterwards. There is evidence of some form of insurance in a number of sources, though not really life insurance the way we talk about it. I'll give you one that comes from the Talmud and gets codified in the Shulchan Aruch. If you have a bunch of donkey drivers, this is in the Talmud, they can make an agreement that anyone who loses their donkey, the rest of the group buys him a replacement.
Huh.
So that's straight up insurance. That's car insurance.
Right.
Right? At least car theft insurance. And yeah, that's a useful parallel to this way of thinking. Certainly they did not think of this as like outsmarting God or doubting anything. Right. We don't seem to have evidence of an actual life insurance like we have today back in their time, but they clearly have some notion of this. And yeah, you can build pretty solidly on that and say, okay, you're extending it to life, but it's the same concept. There's nothing wrong of this. Rabbi Ovadia Yosef, who weighs in also and is like, it's totally fine to buy a life insurance policy. Again, just brings us back to saying, just make sure you attribute the success of your planning to God, right? In other words, there is
Ovadia Yosef says that.
Yeah, there's still this instinct of you don't want to completely deprive your worldview of a sense of humility, of you don't control everything. You're not calling all the shots. But sure, do your work and hopefully God will reward, right, that work of working out. Now, this isn't quite in the camp of required, right? This seems like, oh, okay, that's okay, right? Do you want to or
permitted
or not want to? Permitted. Rav Moshe Feinstein, when he addresses the question of life insurance, so it's interesting, his analysis on this, I think, starts to move it into the required territory, even though he doesn't quite go there explicitly. He rejects the whole discourse of worrying about this and just says, life insurance is no different than making a living. You go out, you work, you try to save money, you try to make a profit, you try to provide for your spouse, your kids, whatever it is. Life insurance is just another way of doing that. And often, right, financial advisors will sit down and they'll say, okay, what's your income? What are your savings? what real assets do you have and what insurance policies do you have? And it's just a larger look at your picture. And that's what he says, right, has to be the case. He goes further. He has actually very strong language. He says, there's an arrogance, there's a spiritual arrogance to assuming that you merit God taking care of you.
Right? Don't stand in a place and assume a miracle will be done for you.
Yeah. Ein somchin al hanes, for sure that you don't rely on the supernatural. And even this notion of, in a way, he's turning that earlier statement of Rabbi Eliezer on its head. Rabbi Eliezer says, oh, you're of little faith if you worry about what will be tomorrow. I think Rav Moshe almost would say, you're of little faith if you're a very pious person. If you're not such a pious person, or you're not willing to assert that you are worthy of God taking care of you in that way. So actually, there's a certain humility. There's a religious humility to planning because it's saying, I don't assume I'm getting any divine favors.
Right. That feels logical to me, right? Back to your helicopter boat story, is to say, okay, line up a boat and a helicopter just in case.
Right. Yeah. And, he concedes. He says, look, maybe there's some very small set of people who don't work and learn all day, and their entire life is structured around assuming, rightly or wrongly, that God will provide for them. Maybe they cannot buy life insurance.
It's interesting. I feel like a financial planner might say, well, if you're not making any money, you don't need life insurance.
Right, exactly.
When you're not here,
that's right.
Your family won't have a loss of income.
But what he's basically calling out is saying it's completely incoherent to run the rest of your life on a providing pursuit of capitalist opportunities and then say, oh, I'm too frum to buy life insurance. Yeah. That's ridiculous. It's part of that larger pitch. And he says two other things I think are just sort of great reformulations. He says, how do you bring God into this picture? He says, first of all, you thank God for giving people the insight to come up with the idea of life insurance. Like when you say, atachonen la'adam da'at, there are actually things that's sort of profound. There are things that human society comes up with as systems that they think are going to be helpful to people.
So this is a very strong endorsement of life insurance.
Yeah, it's pretty strong. And I think he bolsters it further. I think this is like half tongue-in-cheek and half quite serious. He says, don't worry about saying you're not trusting God. You're still having faith in God that you'll make the insurance payments every month. That is to say, life insurance policies, they don't just fall out of the sky. It's not like you go worship some idol and get a life insurance policy. You have to invest in them. So will you make the payments every month? Well, that requires some emunah and faith in God, et cetera. Yeah, he's strong. He doesn't quite explicitly say, you must do this. But the language, the same way we would say, well, you do have to get food for your kids and clothe them. This, if it's an extension for him of that, it's kind of implicitly saying, if this is going to help your family, you got to do it.
Yeah. So it sounds like we had sources that point us in the direction of maybe it would be prohibited, but we stop short of prohibiting it. Then we had sources that point us in the direction of maybe it should be mandatory, but we also maybe stop short of requiring it. That would be difficult without knowing requiring what policy and in what context. What exactly would that look like? And then also, we aren't even really going to say permitted, although maybe that's where it is. Obviously, if someone's like, but I have the form filled out online, am I clicking submit or not? It's in essence, that's your call. It gives us a lot to think about. And I think just a reminder that how this would get applied in any given family might look very different based on the financial situation. There are listeners, I imagine, who will be outraged to hear that you don't always have life insurance. And there may be other listeners who would say, would that I had the money in my life, the sort of expendable income to be able to be putting money towards life insurance payments. I don't have that luxury because that's not the financial class that I'm in. And that maybe the fact that different people have different answers is itself a problem that we want to think about broadly as a community.
Sounds right.
Thank you.
Take a walk with me to the willow tree. Hear hidden memories memories of another's life. Don't you love the way she can bend and not break underneath the weight and wrongs of life? They can't put a price on a human life.
Have a halachic question you'd like answered on the show? Email us at responsaradio@hadar.org. Responsa Radio is a project of the Hadar Institute. Thanks to Chana Kupetz and Jeremy Tabick for producing this podcast, and to David Khabinsky for recording and editing this episode.
I am hope in a hideaway. I am love. I am brave. I'm not afraid to stand up to hate. They can't put a price on a human life. No, they can't put a price.